So, good evening and welcome. Welcome to this episode 6 of Apex Hours for Students. We will be learning quite a lot of new things today. Today's session is going to be a continuation of the session that we had day before yesterday. Sorry, we couldn't have the yesterday's session due to unforeseen circumstances, but we'll continue as usual henceforward, right? Henceforth. So today's session is going to be automating business processes, but we're going to be looking at different tools beyond the tools that we spoke about in the part one of this particular session. We're going to be seeing a lot of new tools. So just a quick introduction about me. My name is Jigar Shah. I am a global community speaker and the co-founder of Path to Code, which is a program to onboard fresh developers into Salesforce and Salesforce Apex Hours. Jigar Shah 189 is my Twitter as well as my LinkedIn handle. Feel free to reach out to me even after the session to if I can help you answer some of your queries or if there are specific doubts that I can help you with. So what are we going to be talking about today? So today's session is, of course, we'll just get a very quick view or perspective in terms of what a business process is. Then we are going to learn a very important tool today, which will be the key of your Salesforce admin journey, right? And that is Lightning Flows. Right? We're going to be talking about Lightning Flows today. Yes, guys, one and only Lightning Flows. And then after that, we're going to be talking about assignment rules. We of course have a Q&A session as usual at the end, so stay tuned for it. Please don't drop off. Before we start the session, a few housekeeping rules like we do it every time. Please make sure you mute your mic. No questions are silly, so please don't shy away from asking any question. Try to put your questions in the Q&A window and we will try to answer them in the last 15 minutes of this session. So with that, let's try to understand what a business process is. There is almost day in and day out of your admin journey or your Salesforce journey. There will often be a reference to to a term called as business process. So what is this business process? So business process is nothing. It's a series of structured steps, right, which are performed in a definite sequence, either manually by people or with the help of automations using systems or tools in order to achieve or get a desired outcome, whether it's in the form of service, it's the form of a product, and the whole objective is that this is all aligned with a business objective. So that's the reason why it's a process that is aligned with process that is formulated in order to achieve a different business objective, if you have to say it in crude terms, right? Now, what are I'm sure each one of you has been a part of a business process. Maybe you may not have realized at a certain point in time, but some of the common examples like leave management, right? Some of you might be working and, if you're going on leave, even if you're a student, you have a process where you got to notify your your professors or your teachers about your leave. So, so you go out, apply a leave, somebody goes and looks at it, approves it, right? It's a series of steps, right? And the whole objective is to make sure that there is collaboration and transparency in terms of who is available and who is not, right? So similarly, there is expense booking, salary processing. These are just some. I mean, there are tons and tons of business processes. And now, why are we talking about business processes? It is important to know that any and every automation, customization, whether it is through declarative tools or whether it is through programmatic tools, is always done in order to automate or in order to establish a business process. So the system, so Salesforce in this case, is a mechanism that helps you perform a business process with ease, where different types of users will perform different types of functions. They will collaborate and help achieve a business objective. So sales process is another example of business process. Support process is another business process. So that's what a business process is all about, right? Now, and like I said, it has defined steps. So when we talk about business processes, what are the tools available from a Salesforce side that that are readily available out of the box uh, in order to cater to this business, the spectrum of business process automation? So there are three basic tools, two of which we have already talked about, but this slide just provides a very comparative overview of a workflow versus a process builder versus a lightning flow in terms of their capabilities, right? So there are some specific things that you can perform with a workflow. Process builder is a step ahead, and it can do all that a workflow can do, but it has a lot of extra features and functions that you can do, right? Even you can invoke, in fact, even invoke Apex code. But we have another tool, which is a lightning flow, which is way more powerful than a process builder, right? So it can do a lot of things that a process builder can do, right? But there are additional things that the lightning flow is capable of, right? So first of all, a flow can provide you with a series of guided user interfaces, right? Which you can customize so that a user, you can provide a guided mechanism or guided interface to your users to fill in information and do some computations. It can also run in the background and do a lot of complex calculations, right? The the key feature of a lightning flow is its ability to iterate over a list of records or a collection. Okay, now when we talk about iteration, think of it as a regular for loop, right, that we would write in our C, C++, or any other programming language. You can actually do the same thing purely with clicks and without writing a single piece of code. And that is where the beauty of lightning flow is. It does a phenomenal job at that. And most of the use cases, if you see, so one of the key things you always look for when you're writing applications on the Salesforce platform or building applications for businesses is that you will always think about your functionality being bulk safe, which means you would always assume that there is a baseline assumption that there will be many records, more than one records. So your automation that you write has to be capable of accommodating multiple records. Okay, basically, if you write something for multiple records, it works with a single record as well, right? So that's a quick introduction about lightning flow. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritties of lightning flow, let's be very clear on the terminology. I've seen a lot of people who use some of these terms interchangeably, but these terms that we have on the screen right now have different meanings. So it is imperative that we understand each of these terms and the meaning for that. Okay, right? So what is a lightning flow? Lightning flow is nothing but a declarative tool provided by the Salesforce platform. So the name of the product is actually Lightning Flow, and it is available as a part of the Salesforce platform. Flow Builder is actually the studio or the designer which provides you a drag and drop kind of an interface where you can drag and drop elements and a lot of other things, right? And it's more like a what you see is what you get editor in order to build out a complete flow, right? A flow interview is nothing but an instance of an actual flow that has been built out. So when a flow is actually running, it's a flow interview. So that's what I refer to a term as an instance, right? So far so good. These are some of the key terms that I would request you to keep in mind whenever you are referring to flows or any aspect which is related to lightning flows. Okay. So one of the key one of the basic things. So when you talk about flows, lightning flows, that lightning flows come in two flavors. So you can basically build two types of lightning flows. One is called as a screen flow, right? The screenshot that you see here is, which is highlighted, is a screen flow. And second is an auto launched flow. And we will see this in action in a few minutes, but just to give you an understanding. So a screen flow is nothing but a guided series of screens where it is more like a wizard interface which helps you achieve a desired outcome, right? So let's say you want to log or generate a code by adding a few items. That can be an example of a screen flow. That is where you would end up using a screen flow. On the other hand, there is something called as auto-launched flows. So auto-launched flows run at the back end. They don't really have any kind of user interface associated with them, right? Unlike a screen flow where it is mainly driven by a user interface. Of course, there are back-end calculations, but there is a user interface in screen flows. In auto-launched flows, no user interface. It all runs at the back end. There is some criteria or some entity which can trigger or invoke the flow, and that will lead to performing a certain set of operations, right? So that is where an auto launched flow comes in. For example, an example of an auto launched flow is when a user uh, logs a particular opportunity, right? It should automatically calculate the discount based on some of the rules or the discount rules. That can be a great example for an auto launch flow, because in this case, you are not really putting or requiring any user interface. All this is happening behind the scenes based on criteria, and it is pure play automation without any manual intervention. So that's where an auto launch, that's the difference between a screen flow versus an auto launched flow. We will see details of that, right? But before we jump into a lightning flow, there are some of the key building blocks that I want to talk about, right? So when you talk about building a lightning flow in the editor, and we'll see some of these in action just in a minute or so, the entire set of elements that are available for building a lightning flow can be categorized into three basic categories. They are either elements, they're either connectors, or they are resources. Now, let me talk about each of this in detail, and I'll show you in a while. So elements are nothing but specific steps, right, which a flow comprises of, right? So you could, and there are different types of elements. Okay, the elements can be further segregated into three fundamental types, which is, it could be either a screen element. So screen elements will only come when you have a screen based flow, a lightning flow. Then there is a logic piece to it. So basically, of course, when you write such kind of flows, right, there will always be if else calculation, if else decision making, or calculations, mathematical calculations, logical calculations. So all that piece falls under the logical part. And then there are actions, right? So just like anything that you would do have an outcome, an action is nothing but an outcome, right? And what are the different types of outcome that can be there? So I have just listed some of them. You can do a lot more, right? But these are some of the most common ones. So just like even in a workflow, you can say that, oh, I can send an email, or I can send an outbound message. Same way, in lightning flows, actions can be, you can post to Chatter. So for people who don't know what Chatter is nothing but a collaboration tool, right? So you can post messages to Chatter, you can send out emails, you can submit records for approval, right? I'm not going to get into detail about approval, because approval is something that we're going to talk about in the next session, approval processes. And of course, there are global actions. So global actions are generic actions that can be made available, that can be configured and made available across different types of records. So these are some of the elements that can be used in building a lightning flow. Now, when we talk about a flow, it is a set of steps, right? But there has to be a connection between each step so that it can form a complete pathway, so as to let the flow engine know in what direction or what pathway to flow in, or control, where should the control mechanism flow. So that's where connectors come in, right? Connectors, you can think of connectors simply as arrows which help connect one element to another. So you could have a screen element which connects to a logic element, and there is some input that is accepted from a screen element and sent to the logic element, right? So that's exactly what a connector is. The third is nothing but resource. Now, resources are nothing but, think of them as in-memory variables, right? Now, when you write a basic program, right, you would always create variables of different types. So there are different types listed over here, and Those are what resources are. So whenever you build out your flow using elements and connectors, you would use resources in conjunction with these two to perform some in-memory calculations. So constant is, so one of the resources is constant. Constant is nothing but a fixed value. So for example, pi, let's say if you're doing an area calculation and the value of the mathematical operator pi, which is 3.14. Of course, I don't know the rest of the stuff, but 3.14 is a constant, right? A formula field, something that is auto computed. So you can actually write formulas and use them as resources in some of your elements based on the business logic that you're using. Text template is nothing but it's basically a static text which can be made dynamic with the help of formulas. So for example, a sample example, just a sample for a text template is nothing like it can be an email, a piece of content which you are, let's say, sending within an email to a customer. So let's say somebody registered using the flow, using the screens on the flow, and then now you have to send an email. But where is the content in that email going to come from? You don't really need to create an email template. You can actually create a text template and use that content within an email. Now, text templates are not only for emails, you can use them otherwise also. So when you're doing a wizard-like screen, at the end of the screen, you want to give some message to the user informing him that, hey, the process is complete, thank you. That is a usual user experience that any user would expect. So that is where also text templates can be used to display dynamic or static messages. Variables, like I said. So variables are nothing but in-memory placeholders which will hold values of different types. The value that they kind of hold will depend on the data type that it is defined on, right? So those are variables. And of course, everyone wants options in their lives. And so does, when you're building lightning flows, that is something which you would definitely want. And that's where you have three different types of options. So they're referred to as choice sets, right? So think of them as pick lists, right? But there are three different categories. So there is a simple pick list choice set. So the pick list choice set is nothing but it uses the pick list options from a pick list field on an existing object, right? So let's say you have a field called country on account object and you want to use that, you can use that as a pick list choice set. The next could be a record choice set. Let's say you want to show a pick list which displays a list of all the accounts that you have. Now all these account records are actually records on the account object, but you can show them as a option within a pick list, and that's a record choice set, right? It is basically related with an S object. And then if these two, so these are the recommended ones, you should ideally end up usually these two help you achieve your requirement. But if you really have a custom requirement of what, let's say you want to show language codes or currency codes which are not available, not the regular ones, then you can create your own choice list. You can actually manually key in what options you want to show, and those can be used within the choice type of options. So these are some of the resources that can be used. Now I know it is mind-boggling and overwhelming. It looks like information overload, but just hang on a bit. We will definitely see to use some of these elements, connectors, and resources in action, right? So usually when you talk about elements, let's dwell a little deeper into elements, because elements are like the most fundamental unit of building out a lightning flow, right? They are actually, so think of it as a huge think of the flow as a huge staircase, and each step that you take or each stair that you climb think of it as an element, right? And these, unlike a regular staircase, in this case, each element could be of a different type. So there are three basic buckets into which these elements are categorized, right? One is basically interaction driven, right? Which is either performing some kind of action, which I've already mentioned, or invoking a subflow. The other is logical kind of operations, so which basically deals with logical operators. So first is the assignment. So if you're saying A equal to 12, okay, that is a logical operation, logical type of operation using an assignment operator where you're assigning the variable a of value 12. The second is a decision. Decision is nothing but it's more like an if else, right? So if my opportunity amount is greater than 10,000, the discount give a discount of 10%, else to give a discount of 5%. So that's a decision. Pause. What happens is sometimes in the business processes, you can have certain conditions based on which you want to pause the flow and not want it to finish execution. So you can actually pause the flow at its state, and that's where a pause might come in. The pause element might come in handy. Last but not the least, there is loop. So loop is nothing but like a for loop or a while loop. You can iterate over a collection or a list of records, and we'll see that in action in a while. And then there is data. So data is nothing but your regular CRUD operations. So any kind of data manipulation that you do on your S objects. So either it is associated with record creation or updating existing records or fetching a list of records based on a matching criteria or deleting records. So those are the actions that you can actually or data manipulation that you can perform with these data elements. Okay, so this is the toolbox that you would usually see when you go and try to build out a lightning flow. So with that, we have two demos lined up for lightning flows. The first one is a more screen-based thing where we are going to build out a commission calculator. So the commission calculator is nothing but a tool that helps sales guys calculate the commission on the amount on the amount of the deal that they're trying to close, right? So sales guys usually earn their salary in the form of a commission, which is a percentage value of the total deal amount that they win or are instrumental in winning, right? So that's what we are trying to build over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to my Salesforce instance. I believe you are able to see my screen. So this is a developer edition Salesforce org that I have. So the first thing that I'm going to do is, if you have to use flows, you have to go to this, you have to use the setup, right? So right now I've already clicked setup and I'm in setup. I'm going to go to flows. And then there under process automation, you would see flows. Okay, so click this flows. Don't confuse these flows with login flows. Login flows are different. Okay, login flows are typically used when, let's say you have a requirement that whenever a user logs in to Salesforce, there is a specific announcement or a specific thing that he needs to do first. Then you can use a login flow in that case and enforce that action on the user as soon as he logs in. So that's where a login flow kind of comes in handy. Okay, so here's the flow screen, right? I'm going to go here and say new flows. Don't get bogged down with other terms. I'm not sure if you anyways have a list view like you can do on the other objects. So we have a lot of list. I'm sure there are some additional flows which are there. Okay, but let's go out and build our first screen-based flow. So you say, we are going to build out a commission calculator. So say new flow, and once you go to new flow, you're going to bring it's going to ask you for an option, and we're going to say screen flow. Okay, I'm going to say create. The moment I do, I'm now in the flow builder. So I talked about the flow builder. So this is the toolbox that we just talked about, different types of elements, and the manager screen or the manager tab on your toolbox helps you create resources, right? So the start element is always there by default. Now we're going to go to elements. Now because we want a screen-based flow, what I'm going to do is pull over a screen element. And the moment I pull over a screen element, it's going to give me a pop-up, right? And it's going to ask for different types of elements. So you are going to end up building a form all with a simple drag and drop interface. Now before that, I'm going to put a label to this particular screen. Okay, so I'm going to say commission calculator. Okay, you can customize your header and footer, which is more look and feel driven. You can also customize what kind of buttons you want to see. We don't really want a pause button here, and that's the reason why I would kind of just remove it. So do you see that the moment I remove it, it's just gone away? Of course, we do not want a previous button because it doesn't make sense, right? Um, so we will just leave this as it is, and now we will start adding elements to the form. So what are the first things that you will need to calculate commission? So the first thing that you will need is currency. So I'm going to put a currency field over here. So if you've seen, I just dragged and dropped that currency field. So these are already ready to use components. If you see this, there is get more on App Exchange. So for people who don't know, App Exchange is a marketplace to get sales application, business applications for Salesforce, right? It is almost like an app store or a Google Play Store for Salesforce applications. Similarly, these are some of the ready components which are available or which Salesforce has made available, but you can also go to the App Exchange and get download and install and set up other components. And once you do that, they will show up on this particular list. Right now, I don't really have any additional components involved, so I'm just going to leave it as it is. Okay, and then I'm going to say, so this is the currency field. I'm going to say deal amount. So what is the display label? It's a dollar value, hopefully, right? No brainer. You can put validations. For now, we're just going to keep it simple. If you want to put any custom validations or put any custom messages, error messages, you can put that. Okay, so this is the first thing that we would need on our form, right? So this is good enough. I'm going to say just done. And now if you see, I have added a screen element, right? So this is basically an element. So what are the three building blocks? Elements, connectors, and resources. So we've used the element, okay? And I'm going to save. So the moment I hit save, it's going to ask me, what is the name of the flow that you want to give? So I'm going to say commission calculator. The API name populates by default. You can choose the type. So I'm going to choose screen flow. Here you also have the ability to put in some additional information like when did the flow start. So there are some global variables, right? So all these global variables start with $flow, and there are a lot of things that you can do. Now this information comes in handy when you're trying to troubleshoot a flow. Okay, for now I'm just going to leave it as it is. Okay, let me just say save. We'll go back to, so there will be some warnings, and that's because what these warnings are trying to tell you is you added elements to the flow but you've not connected them, right? So we will do that at a later point in time. Let's just go out and build our screen first. So I'm going to double click. So we added a deal amount. The next thing we need is another number field, right? So I'm going to look for number, which is right here. Okay, and this number field is what? It is going to be the commission percentage, right? So it is actually going to be a value which is, so we're not, it is not going to be a whole number, but it is going to be a value with 2 decimal places and less than 1. Okay, so you can customize your label. I'm just going to keep it very simple. So you just say decimal value not exceeding 1, because percentage can also be accepted as a fraction. So if you see, the message has changed, right? And I'm going to say done. Right now we have this particular thing, right? But what we will also need is, because we have each of these screen elements, right? We will also need to have variables so that the value that you input can be captured in your variables. So what we are going to do is, for now, we'll just clear the screen. We will go to the manager tab and we will say new resource. So I'm going to say a new resource. Okay, and I'm going to simply say a new resource of type formula. Okay, now the formula, okay, so I need to put in a name. So because of this formula, one thing you got to do is remember is when you put in variables or declare any type of uh, resources in your flows, what try to prefix it with the type that makes it easier for you to identify what is the type of the variable, right? Because when you actually build out flows in the real world, there are lots of variables that you end up using. So I'm going to say for total commission amount, right? And I'm going to say a data type. So I'm going to say what is the data type. So let's just keep it as currency, right? With 2 decimal places. Now I'm going to insert a resource. Now I can directly, because I have screen components already available, I can directly use them. Okay, I don't really need to create a variable for them, right? So for now, I'm just going to use these values. So I'm going to say commission into, so the formula for calculating the total commission is nothing but commission into deal amount, right? So it is a simple multiplication. So this formula will return the value of the multiplication of the commission value and the deal amount. Okay, and then I'm going to say save. Okay. The reason why I chose currency, because it's at the end of the day it is going to be a portion of the actual amount, and that's the reason why it is currency. So I say done now. Okay, now what I'm going to do is connect my start element to my commission calculator screen element, and that's where this is what a connector is, right? So the second element or the second building block of your flow is the connector. Now what you're going to do is you will also need to add one other screen, right, which purely just showcases which, so first screen is where you will input the actual amount and the commission percentage. The second screen is which will compute and show you what exactly is the message. But now before you do that, you need to have an assignment. So you actually don't need to have an assignment operator. You can simply just put a screen and say, in this case, I'm going to say total commission. Okay, and now I'm going to put a simple text message, right? So we'll pull a text message. Sorry, not a text message, my bad. It should be a display text. So I'm going to be so difference between text and a display text is basically a text box. Or display text is just a static piece of message. So I'm going to customize the message and I'm going to say text display commission. And I'm going to say, hey, you did a great job. The total commission that you earned on this deal is, and now I can't have a static value. I need to have a dynamic value which is calculated. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply go to insert resource and I'm going to look at the formula that we created, right? So all I'm saying is a formula field. Okay, so what will happen is this is almost like a merge field, right? So what happens is whenever you use this particular field, it will auto calculate and dynamically put in the value based on the input that you have given in the first screen. Okay, so let's see if this works. So this is the message that should be shown to the user. All right, and then we'll say done, right? And then now I'm going to connect this particular thing to the total commission screen, right? Now, one of the things that you need to understand is, so let me first save this. Okay. Now, if while you're building it out and you want to unit test it, you can just do a dry run or a a run for a unit test purely from using the run button. So now if I say run, it will show up the first screen. Ideally, it should show up, hopefully, fingers crossed. Okay, it did. Amazing. So we got our first screen, which is the commission calculator screen. It is asking for a deal amount. I'm going to put the deal amount as 25,000. Okay, and then or I'd say 20,000 just to make it easier for calculation. And then I'm going to put in some commission. So I'm going to put in a value of 0.20, right? So a decimal value not exceeding 1. It's 2 decimal places, but it's automatically. Now, if you see, there is a screen which it is provided and you're giving inputs. Now, the moment you say next, hopefully, if everything goes right and the input is provided, you should see the commission value being computed from this, right? So, which I think ideally should be $4,000. So let's see if it works. So simply what has happened is it is shown a message and it says all the message is static, but the actual calculation of the commission amount has been shown dynamically, right? So basically this helps you verify and validate that your flow is running. The moment you say finish, it's going to take you back to the earlier screen, right? But having said this, the flow is not yet active. Okay, what happens is a flow once you build it has to be explicitly activated. But before I do that, I want to show you one more thing, which is the debug tab. So what happens is this is a very simple flow, a bare minimum basic flow that we have built. Okay, but when you have too many elements and we're building it out, you will of course want to troubleshoot and see what are the values that are going in and how is the calculation being done or what is the flow. So you can use the debug button. Okay, so the debug button will execute the mode. Okay, so it will bring up this particular screen. It basically calls the latest version. We will talk about what do you mean by latest version in a bit, but it also talks about rendering the flow in a lightning runtime. So basically, what does that mean? Flows are expected. So there is this setting within process automations within the setup side where you can get a look and feel of lightning, right? You can also have a look and feel of classic. So that is where what it says is whatever screen elements you use, that kind of comply with lightning runtime. So it feels very native. Okay, you could also have a classic look and feel in the lightning runtime. That's possible. Okay, so I'm not going to uncheck or check this. I'm just going to say run. Now the moment I say this, it's going to simulate this, but now if you see, there is this debug details window. So we're going to put in the same values again just to see the intrinsics of what is being done. Is it calculating the way we want it to? So I'm going to say 0.20 and I'm going to say next. Okay, the first thing you see over here before I hit next is which user started the interview. So this is an essential piece of information which comes in handy when you have errors in your flows. So I'm going to say next, and now it will show you the message. It said that, oh, it used the currency element, it used the deal amount and the commission element, and the value provided at runtime for each of these elements was 20,000 and this, right? And then you did next. So this is the value that you got. So it is giving you details about each of these particular steps, or which were the elements through which the data actually flowed, right? So now if I say finish, it will show you the third element, which is the total commission, right? Which is, it said that, so now you can validate that at each step, how is your flow performing and what is it doing? Okay, so this is an essential tool, very handy to troubleshoot your flows when they don't work. Okay, they can really be complicated sometimes. So I'm going to close this off, and then I'm now going to go back. We'll talk a little bit about activation. Okay, So you exit the flow builder and you go back to your earlier screen. So we tested it out and it is working fine. Great. Now, so the reason why it is not showing is because it's filtered out. Okay. So we've not activated it. So the thing is, if you want to run a flow or make it available to your users, you need to activate it. Okay. So in order to activate it, what you have to do is click the actual flow, and then within that they have flow versions. So versioning is you can actually have an entire history of all the changes that you made to your flow, right? So sometimes what happens is when you build it out, you realize that, oh, there was a particular element which we're not supposed to use, or I configured it in the inappropriate way. So how do I go about doing or making changes? So what you have to do in that case is, if it's already activated, you will have to deactivate it and create a new version. In this case, we don't really create a new version, right? You can simply hit the activate button, and now your flow is ready to, or it is available for use. Okay. Now, how do you actually use this particular flow, or where can you actually use this flow? Because this is a screen-based flow, right? So you can use it at multiple places. You can use it on the actual home tab. So which is the landing page of Salesforce um, when you kind of log in to Salesforce. So when I say home, I'm referring right. So you can actually have something added to the home tab, right? You can customize this, or you can have it on a record detail page, or you can build a custom lightning page. So let's just build a sample lightning page and actually see this in action. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my setup window. Okay. And I'm going to say app builder. Lightning app builder. Okay, so what is a Lightning App Builder and Lightning App? So with Lightning Experience, Salesforce has come out with this concept of Lightning Pages. We'll have to take a step back and understand what is this concept. So earlier, everything was page-based, right? All web applications were page-based, means they were a series of pages connected to each other with the help of things like buttons and links and all of that. Now that model is a little inefficient, right? And that's the reason why the new paradigm that came in was single page applications, right? Now single page applications were really very, very useful or very easy to use, because you don't really have to waste time navigating from one element to another, right? So now with Lightning App Builder, you can actually build applications which are single page without having to write any piece of code. So I'm just going to build out one sample home page type of applications. So I'm going to say new. Okay. And then I'm going to say home page. Okay, because I want this to sit on the home page. I'm going to say next. I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to say commission calculator, right? Just give it a label, say next. You're going to use standard home page. So basically you can choose your template, the segregation. I say finish, and that brings me to this wonderful Lightning App Builder. Okay. What I'm going to do now is just add a flow element here. Okay, so the moment I say flow, okay, it will show me all the available flows. At this point in time, I only have one screen flow available, which is commission calculator, and that's the reason why I'm it auto selected that. Okay, I'm just going to keep it simple. What does the layout say? One column, and say save. Okay, so same way, just like a flow needs to be activated, this pages also need to be activated. So I'm going to say activate, and it's going to take a few minutes before it activates. Okay, and I'm going to set this as the org default. So you can actually choose where you want to show this. So for simplicity, I'm just going to say assign as org default, which means that everyone will see the same homepage. But you can actually customize and say that if you have got 5 apps, each of the apps used by different sets of users, each app can have a different homepage, and that is what the app default is. But I'm going to say it is org default. So I'm going to say org default. Okay, and say save. Okay, so I'm just going to hit save and then go back. I think it is already activated, so I'm just going to go back now. It's all saved now. I'm going to go and refresh the home page. Now the home page should be overridden and it should show me the calculator element. Okay. Yeah. So it's the same thing, but now I can actually give it as a widget, and I can do the same thing. 25,000, put in, let's say 20%, right? 0.20, and just say next, and it's going to give me the commission, right? So this is how you can build out a screen flow and make it available to users, right? Now let's quickly jump. We are eating up a lot of time in this, so I'm going to quickly jump over and move a little fast. The next demo that I have is for the auto launched flows. So that's going to be a big chunk. I'm going to go a little fast. If you have questions, just keep posting your questions, right? So now auto launch flows, I said there is no user interface, right? But there has to be, it just runs based on certain criteria or condition that we have that we have decided based on the business logic. So we're going to create a very simple auto launched flow, right? What we're going to do is we're going to simply add the count of all the contacts whenever on an account. So whenever a new contact is added to an account, right, we'll write an auto launch flow which will automatically iterate through all the available contacts and provide it or stamp that value in a auto calculated field and put it into a field on accounts, right? So let me go back to flows quickly. Okay. Now the thing is, auto launched flows will need some kind of help to be invoked. Hence, what we are going to do is we're going to use a process builder. That process builder is going to input some values to the flow, and that flow will run and in turn, iterate the contact records, get the values, and stamp it on an account record. Now, what we're going to do first is we need some information we need some field on account to calculate okay, let me just quickly go to account. So I'm using the object manager here, and I'm going to field, and I'm going to simply create one sample field which is new field. And because it is a numeric value that I'm going to stamp, so I'm going to say number. So I'm going to choose number and say next. Okay, so we are going to say contact count. Okay, it's a whole number, so it'll be, you'll leave the rest of the things as it is. We'll just provide a default value of 0. Go say next. We're going to just make this available for now to all the users. Let's not worry about security for now. Okay, and then we are going to add this field to the layout. Okay, so I'm going to add it to the account layout. So the reason why we're creating this field is basically whenever contacts are added, the value will be updated in this field on account. Correct? let's go back to flows and let's start creating a new flow. So it is going to present us the same free screen. This time we are going to use auto launch flows. Say create, okay, present us with the same kind of interface, but if you see, there are certain elements which are missing. Now you don't see a screen element anymore, right? Which used to be there when you chose a screen-based flow. So the first thing that I'm going to do is, now think of it, see the thing, if you've written a little bit of program in any language, flows generally operate in that same manner. So the logic piece remains the same. So what is the first thing that you would do? Right? Let's assume that you have, this has to be triggered when a new contact is created, right? So what we're going to do is, but we have to find out the associated account and all the associated other contacts for that account, right? So I'm going to first create a new resource, and this I'm going to create as a variable. This is I'm going to say parent account ID. Now we will understand in a bit what does this means. It's a simple ID field which will hold the ID of the parent account record, and this value will be passed over to us from a process builder, and we will see how to do that. Okay, the data type will be text. We don't really want to have any default values associated over here. Okay, the meaning of available for input and available for output typically means that you can have one flow invoke another flow, or you can have variables from these flow either set from outside. Let's say if you had a piece of Apex code, or if you had a process builder, you can have these variables set from outside this particular flow. And in our case, we need that. That is the reason why I'm going to set it as available for input, right? And then I'm going to say done, right? So this is one variable that we have created. Now let's go and assume that we have, based on the insertion of a contact record, we have invoked, or we have triggered this particular, we triggered a process builder, and the process builder has passed a value which is provided in this parent account ID. Now based on this, you will want to retrieve the associated child record. So what we're going to do is quickly go and do get records. So get records is a data element. I'm going to say get contacts, get child contacts, right? That's what we are doing. So name nomenclature is very essential in these things. It helps people understand what the flow is doing. Now you're saying, you said get record, but which type of object that you want to get records for? That is going to be contact records, right? You say contact records. Now, do you want to get all records, or do you want to get specific records? In our case, it has to be specific records. So in our case, it has to be records whose contact record whose account ID matches our parent account ID, which has been passed over to our flow, right? We don't really need to sort it, but if you feel like you can just say descending. So you can actually sort your results also. I'm just going to, just for a feel good factor, I'm going to say, sorry, sort by created date, not, so I'm going to say created date. Okay, in our case it could be multiple records, so I'm going to say all records, right? I also want to say that when no records are returned, right? So this is in turn going to run a query at the backend and give me the records based on the criteria that are segregated. Now understand that this records that you get needs to be put into a in-memory variable, which is a collection variable, and we've not created a collection variable. So we will go ahead and create a collection variable. So you can just say new resource. Collection variable is another variable that you will need. Now this is going to be a variable, but we're going to say where contact list, right? And the data type for this is going to be record, which means that it is going to hold contact records. And because it is a collection, we're going to say allow multiple values, right? Now this collection, what type of record are we saying? So these has to be contact records. So think of it like this. Your get records element queries and gets the records. Now you're going to hold that records at some place, and this new resource, the where contact list collection variable, is what you're going to hold it in. Okay, same thing, we don't really need to pass this over, so we can just refrain from checking this, say done. Okay, and now I'll have to go and choose. So I'm going to say collection variable, But now as soon as I choose a collection variable, there are other things that will come into play. So it also tells you, okay, which so you got the records, you put it into a collection variable. Now what are the columns that you want on that record? So for us, we just need the ID field, because we just want to, it is going to hold a list of contact records with just the ID value. Okay, if you want to hold more values, you can just choose all the available columns will be shown up for the contact record. Okay, now this being done, I'm just going to say save, sorry, done. That gets me the contact record. So I have a interim collection where the records are queried and retrieved. Now I have to iterate over them, right? So think of writing a for loop if you're programming, and that's where we are going to use the loop element. Okay, so I'm going to say loop, sorry, it's a label, so I'm going to give it a meaningful. So iterate contacts, right? Now I'm going to choose the collection variable, saying that which collection do I iterate over. So I'm going to say the where contact list. I want to choose the direction of iteration. I'm not going to change anything. Now, when you do a for loop, it has a start condition, an incremental value, and an end condition. So you would always write for I equal to 0, I less than something, I plus plus. So I equal to 0 is start, I less than something is the terminal condition, and then you would also write how you want the incremental behavior, how you would traverse, right? So in this case, you will need a traverse variable, right? It's more like a for each loop. So I don't have a traverse variable. I'm going to create one. So this is also going to be another variable. Okay. So I'm going to say where contact record. Okay, because what it's going to do is it's going to iterate over a list of contact records and hold and put values in the where contact record. Now in this type also has to be a record, because what value that is coming out of the list and what value it needs to be stored in this particular variable should match. That's the reason why we are saying contact. Okay, I don't really need an input here, so I'm just going to leave it the way it is. This case, it is only going to be one record at a time. Hence, I have not checked the allow multiple values collection. So I say done. Okay, I will go and choose the variable, right? And I say done. Now, when I do this, I will also need a variable to hold the counter, or basically the counter value. So I'm going to go to my manager and say contact resource, create a new resource. I'm going to say variable where contact counter. Okay, and then I'm going to say number, because this is going to be a number field. Decimal values, these are going to be whole numbers. So yeah, default value, we just leave it as it is, and then we say done. Okay, now where and how will this come into play? Okay, so we will have to have, so every time you iterate over a loop, you will have to perform something or calculate, which means you have to increase the counter. So what we're going to do, we are going to add an assignment operator. Okay, and what we are going to do, we are going to say ESG, sorry. So this is what we're trying to assign is the counter value. Counter value, we just say get counter value. Okay, set variables. Now we're going to assign a variable. So what we're going to say is we already have a counter. We're going to say, so there are already operators which are available, mathematical operators. So I'm going to use the add operator and say add 1. So this means it is almost like saying where contact counter equal to where contact counter plus 1, or plus plus where contact counter. Okay, that's what it is. So I said this and I say done. Now every time you loop or iterate over, in case there are multiple records, it is going to check this thing and increment the counter, but you also need a terminal condition. So what happens when the loop completes? So you had 5 records, it iterated over all 5 records and completed. What are you going to do in this case? So in this case, we're quickly going to do another assignment, right? In this case, we're saying assign final count value. In this case, I'm going to say 2 things. I'm going to say where contact list equals sorry. So there is one thing, there's one step which I missed out. I need to have one other manager and another resource, because what we are eventually going to do is we're going to eventually update a account record. So we need an account object, an instance of an account object. So what I'm going to get a new resource, a variable of type record, and I'm going to say account to update. Okay, the type is going to be record and it's going to be account. Okay, and now I'm going to so I'll tell you why I created that. I'm going to use the account operator in assignment over here. So I'm going to say assign account values, right? And now I'm going to set the variable. So there are 2 things only that I need. I need so I'll say where account to update, which is the instance, and I'm going to say ID, account ID equals the parent ID of the record. And then I'm going to also, the actual value that we are going to assign is the counter value, which is going to be on the account field. So we said contact count, right? Let's search for that. Okay, so that's the field that we created just a few minutes ago, and this equals, so we're going to, what is the value that is going to come? It's going to come from the variable, which is the contact counter variable. So make sure your types are the same, the variables that are setting the value and the variable or the field where the value is being set is the same. Okay, so I'm just going to say done. Now we've done the assignment, and now the last thing is we actually go and update this on the record. So I'm going to use the update records element, and I'm going to say update account, update contact value on account. Okay, and in this case, because we already have an instance ready, I'm going to use the variable which I have, which is where account to update. So it has 2 columns, the ID value and the value of the counter, which it is going to set in the contact count field, right? You can also use this option where you can filter records based on a specific condition. But because we already have a variable, we are going to directly use that variable rather than filtering it out. Okay, so I'm going to say save. Okay, now we have all our elements in place. Let's go and start adding connectors. Okay, so for simple connectors, there's no problem. Now look at the fun when we do iterate contacts. Okay, so it tells me where do you want this to go. So like I said, because it's a loop, we want this assignment to be executed for every item. So that's why it says for each item. And if we use this, it's going to say this is the exit condition, right? Assign account. So at the end, when the list completes, this is where you go. Okay, you may just want to connect this back just to make sure it goes back. And once you have the final value in your account variable, you put it in the you will try to update it to the actual account record. That's what is using the update contact value on account. Now we're going to save this particular flow. We have not saved it, so say update contact on account, right? And we're going to keep this as an auto launched flow and say save. Right now, saving doesn't mean that this is already ready. We have to go back and activate it. So I'm going to go back. And so I already have one flow which is activated. So I'll just say all flows. So we have this. So I'm going to click update contact on account, and in that I can say activate. So I'm going to activate the first version. Now the reason why I need to activate this is because if you remember, we just built one part of the solution. The other part is actually the process builder, which will invoke and pass the account ID value to this particular flow. So let's go and build the process builder very quickly. So I'm going to go to process builder. I'm going to just open this in a new tab. Just take a while it loads. Now there is already one process builder if it's built. I'm going to just create a new process builder. See, new process builder. What is the process builder doing? It says invoke contact counter flow, right? Give meaningful names so that it is very easy to understand at a later point in time. So now you choose a criteria saying that when does this process builder invoke? So we say this process builder invokes when a record changes, okay? And we're just going to say save. Now I've start adding an object. So on which record should we add this particular process builder? In this case, because we're going to deal with contact records, we will say contact. For now, I'm just going to keep it simple. I'm going to say only when a new contact record is created, that's when you fire, fire this. This flag is for recursion. So if one process updates the record, which in turn results in the process builder being fired subsequently, that's where the recursion piece comes in. So I'm going to say save. Now I'm going to put a criteria, and I'm going to say add criteria. I'm going to say invoke flow. Okay, so I just want to say that every time a contact record is added, I just don't want any criteria to be checked for. So I say just execute it every time. Okay. And now we want to add an action. So this is going to be an immediate action. So we will choose an action type. In this case, we will choose the action as flows, right? So I'm going to say invoke contact counter flow, and then I'm going to choose a flow to auto launch. Now the flow that we created will only show up here if it is active. It is activated, right? That's the reason why we created and activated it first. So I'm going to choose that. We don't have any other flows on this, so it's just one. If you had multiple, it would show up, right? Auto launch flows I'm talking about. Now, one of the key things is to pass a value of the account ID to this particular flow. So this is where it comes. It allows you to add set flow variables. So I'm going to say add row. I'm going to choose a flow variable. So I have a parent account ID. We'll just keep it as field reference, and we're going to choose a field on contact. So what field do we want to choose? We want to choose an account ID. So I'm just going to say ID and say choose. So this is how what I'm telling the flow is, hey, when this particular flow process builder executes, call this particular flow which says about contact on account and set the flow variable within this particular flow to a value of the current contact's account ID record. Okay, and I'm going to say save. Simply say save. We also need to activate this particular flow. Activate. Now, same way, just like you have versions. Versioning is very simple, right? Multiple historical historical references, all the previous changes that you have, they have a copy of that maintained. So each has a different version, right? So in this case also, process builder also, it is the same. So I'll just say quickly confirm. Okay. And then, so now the process builder is all active. We'll just go back to setup. And if you see, it should be activated now. Okay, so we just went back. We just go to process builder and see it's activated. All the flows. So we have we have invoke contact counter flow, and it's active. So now let's go and test this out. So the use case is very simple. What we're going to do is whenever we add, so let me just search for accounts. Go to the accounts tab. Okay, I have a few account records already there. I'm going to choose Burlington Textiles. Let's see if we have some contacts on this particular record already. I don't know for sure. Oh, we already have one. Now, if you go and see the record now, okay, the field value will show up as 0 or blank, purely because this record existed before the flow was built. Okay, the values will update only when the flow is actually run. So the flow has not been run. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to this particular related list and I'm going to add a new contact record. Now what will happen is the moment I add a new contact record, it's going to trigger or invoke a flow. Sorry, invoke a process builder, which will invoke a in turn invoke a flow. So I'm just going to add one sample test 109. Hopefully that should work. Okay, I say save. So we have 2. So ideally the value that should be stamped in our field should be 2. Let's see if it was working. So let me just refresh the record. Okay, so there. It's automatically computed it to 2. Now, if you want to see, if I go to that, and if I keep adding one more, just for you guys to know, test 81, test 81. Okay, earlier the value was 2, now it should be 3, right? So we just say save. So you have to explicitly refresh the page, right? That's when it will show up the actual new value. So you see the contact count variable has changed the value to 3. So this is a simple way of how you can build a flow to, either using a screen wizard or an, or an auto launch, or an auto launch flow, which can be triggered in via a process builder. So that is all about flows that we have. I know I'm exceeding the time. I'm not sure if we want to continue with assignment rules because I still have one more demo, or we want to stop here. I think it's already 8:15. Amit, what do you want to do? We'll just
if we can complete that in next 5 to 10 minutes, we should be good, I guess.
Okay, I'll try to complete it as soon as possible. Okay. So yeah, I mean, I'll just quickly switch back to my slide deck now. So yeah, that was all about building flows. So you learned how to build flows, screen flows and auto launching flows. These are some key considerations in terms of governor limits. That is true for every element or every entity that you use on Salesforce, right? So nothing to be worried about, but yeah, just keep these numbers in mind. The next thing that we have today is assignment rules. So assignment rules are special type of rules that are available on the Salesforce platform, and they help you generally streamline your lead generation or the support process, because they are generally available with leads and cases only. They're also available with topics, by the way, right? But majorly they're used with leads and cases. Now, what is an assignment rule? So think of a typical support process, okay, where customers have issues and they will put service requests where there is a big support team from the provider, and they are going to address these requests. But everybody can't address everything, right? So you can have so let's think of a computer business. You could have two different types of issues, right? You could have a software issue and a hardware issue. now you would, as a business provider, you will have two different support teams which will take care of these two different types of issues, right? So you don't want them to get mixed up and lose their focus. That is where assignment rules come in handy, where you can do an auto assignment, write a rule based on a criteria to say that, okay, if it's a software type of an issue, it goes to a certain queue, right? Or it shows up to certain types of users. If it's an hardware type of issue, it shows up, or it is applicable to the hardware team, right? So so that's usually what an assignment rule is. We'll see a quick demo. The golden rule to remember is, when you're typically having or setting up assignment rules, try to have one rule for segmentation criteria. So what do I mean by segmentation criteria? The example that I gave, software and hardware, right? So software and hardware, the case type can be the segmentation criteria. So you can have one rule with multiple criteria written for hardware and one rule with multiple criteria written for software, so that there is clear demarcation, okay? And it is easier to troubleshoot, okay? So that these are some of the key things you want to know about assignment rules. Let me see if I can quickly jump into Salesforce and show you what an assignment rule is. So I'm going to just close this and go to my setup window. So within quick action, I have lead assignment rules and case assignment rules. So let's just go to case assignment rules. So cases in Salesforce are nothing but service requests or tickets that support teams receive, right? So now there are some standard case assignment rules. What I'm going to do is quickly open up a case tab. Okay, so I have some cases already, default records. So if I just open, there's generally a case source which comes in, okay? So case origin, okay, what you call it as. So you can have segmentation criteria based on anything. I mean, it could be based on the line of business, like I mentioned, software versus hardware. It could be based on the sources from where the cases are. So you could have a team which only takes care of cases coming from the web, and then another team for phone and email, right? So for a quick demo, I'll just showcase an assignment rule based on the case origin, right? So that we can segregate. So whenever a new case is created, it will automatically assign it to the respective queue. So for that, we need to first go and quickly create a queue. So queue is an interim place where cases will reside, okay? So there in Salesforce, every record, okay, there is something called as an owner that will be there. So an owner for a record can own, so owner can be a user. So if I am the user who's creating the record, I can be the owner in this case, which is here, but I can also, a queue can also be the owner of a record, right? So in this case, we are going to create a queue. We are going to create two queues. I'm going to create a web queue and a phone queue. So we say web support queue. We are not going to provide any email. This is basically, this checkbox is to say notify members, saying that whenever whenever there's a new assignment or new allocation to the queue, all the members who are visible to or have access to the queue will get notified. So now I'm just going to put these details. So so I'm just going to say case in this case, and this queue is basically associated with cases, and I'm going to put all the users for now, right, and say save. So we created one, which is a web support queue. Now we'll create one, which is a phone queue, which is typically for phone. Okay, same drill, but in this case also it will be just case. We'll give it all users, right? And I'm going to say save. So these are the two places where all these members will have access, right? There's a web support and a phone support. So now quickly, let's go to and write an assignment rule. So we are going to, because this is all going to be with cases, where we case assignment rules, right? There is already a standard assignment rule. Let me just check and I'm just going to deactivate that. Okay, now I'm going to go back and create a new rule, new case assignment rule, and I'm going to say phone or say web support. I'm going to say active, say save. Okay, so we already have a web support rule. So within a rule, you can have multiple criteria or the rule entries. So I'm going to, we'll just keep it simple. We'll just have one entry criteria. You can have multiple, right? So one of the things you understand is when you have multiple criteria, you can specify the numerical order in which these rules will execute. So based on the order number, it will take that criteria as the first and evaluate it. So my criteria is very simple. I'm saying whenever it is a case origin equals web, you put that case in this particular queue. So I'm going to say assign it to a queue, right? And which is the queue in this case? Is going to, because it's a what was that? I'm sorry. It's a web support. Yeah. So it's going to be a web queue. Okay. No email templates. Just keep it simple. Let's not worry about the other details and say save. Right. So I have a simple rule that whenever there is a incoming case or a new case gets created, it will be also auto assigned provided its case origin equals web to the web support queue. Okay. I will not go and build out the other one just for ease. So I'm just going to go to cases. Okay. Let's see if I can clone this. So I'm going to just clone this and say new case. I'm going to set the case origin as web just to change something so that we are able to, I'm just going to call this as a test web case. Okay, just give it some name and then say save. Assign using active assignment rule. I'm going to make sure that I check this. So it will make sure that it will respect the active assignment rule. Okay, hopefully now the owner should change. If I would have created a case owner is ApexR speakers by default, because I'm logged into that user. Now, if I say save, so if you see the case owner has changed. So automatically it has created assigned this case to the web support queue. Now, how do I go and look at this particular case? So the simple way to look at this is to go on the cases tab. And whenever a case is created, automatically a list view is also created. So if you see, there is a phone support queue and a web support queue. We never went ahead and created these list views, but it automatically got created. That's how queues operate. They will create a list view also. So if I go and see a web support queue, I now see that there is one case which I just created. Okay, so same way I can do it for phone support, right? This was one, origin was one criteria. We can have different criteria. So this just reduces the overhead of manually assigning cases to people. You just put in rules and it just auto assigns. So that is the whole idea behind using assignment rules. So yeah, that was pretty much it. Just try. No, we went a little overboard. There are some great modules on Trailhead in terms of flow basics and lightning flows. You can use that. And then of course there is a Cloudflow designer guide, which is a great piece of documentation to understand all the nitty-gritties about flows. There's the URL to the flow basics and the lightning flow Trailhead modules. So go out, after the session, I would request you to go and dirty your hands and actually become more hands-on using this tool. And with that, I will open up the floor for questions. So I think there are quite a few questions. I'm going to pause my share and look at some of the questions in the chat window. So I believe there is one question which says how many flows and process flows. So process flows can be activated at a time. So when you say flows and process flows, I believe you're referring to flows and process builders, right? That is what I'm assuming here. So Honestly, I don't really remember the numbers, but yeah, I do have them on my slide. So let me just quickly pull up that slide and show that to you. So if you are saying how many flows can be activated, it depends on your edition. So Salesforce has different editions. There is an Essentials or a Professional edition, and then there is Enterprise Unlimited, blah, blah, blah. So you can create versions for flow. Basically, you can have 50 versions of a flow, and in an org for Professional as well as the other editions, this is the same. The number of total executed elements also remains the same, but active flows, to answer your question, for Essentials or a Professional edition, it is five flows per flow type, which means 5 screen flows and 5 auto flows, auto launch flows. But for an Enterprise or Unlimited or a Performance or a Developer edition, it's 2000. Okay, so this is active flows, and then there is of course total flows, which comprises of active as well as inactive. So these are some of the numbers. Like I said, don't know to by heart. Just be aware about these things, right? Okay. There is one more question which I have saying that how to edit existing flows, process flows. Okay. So how to edit existing flows. So the only way to edit an existing flow, I'm assuming that if it's active, you'll have to deactivate it first, and create a new version. So let me just quickly go back and show that to you if that's possible. Switching to my Salesforce instance. Hopefully you guys should be able to see the flows screen. So I have flows, I go to flows, and I have this particular flow which is activated. Now let's say I want to make a change to one of the elements, right? So this is already active. The first thing I'll have to do is go ahead.
Jigar, we are still see your presentation. Yeah, now we are on your Salesforce.
Okay, so I just went to flows and revisited the flow that we created. So this flow is already active. Assuming that you want to change something, you have to deactivate this flow here, and okay, open this flow. You can make, so what you have to do is then do a save as or create a copy, and when you start doing a save as, it will give you an option whether you want to create a new version of the same flow or you want to create a new flow. So version is, it'll just keep the history. Ideally, if you're modifying existing flows, it's better to create a new version. If it's a completely different flow, then you use a new flow, right? So you just say save and you say a new version. Okay, and that's going to create a new version. Now you say earlier it was V1, now it has changed to V2, and now you can go ahead and make changes. So let's say this is get child contacts. I'm saying get child contacts 1 and say save. So now I'm able to make changes to an existing flow. All you have to remember is you have to follow the drill again, that once you save it, you have to go back and activate that particular version, right? To make sure that it is available for users to, for users to use. So I believe those are all the questions that we probably have today. But even after this session, like I said, if you have more questions, feel free to reach out over our social media handles, and I'll be more than happy to help. So thank you guys, and I think thank you for being so patient. I know we ran over our time today, but I think it was all worth the effort and the time that we spent. So stay hungry, stay foolish, keep learning, and see you on Monday for another exciting episode. We're going to be talking about approval processes and some other automation tools that can be used on the Salesforce platform. Thank you once again.